Hello, everyone, and welcome to another live episode edition of the Ordinary People Doing Extraordinary Things podcast show. I am your host, Carrie Roberts, and today I am joined by another extraordinary guest who I also know personally, Miss Lee Comer. Thank you, Lee, for being here tonight.
Well, hi, Carrie. Thanks for having me and giving me a chance to share.
Yes, and if you are joining and you want to give a shout out or you want to ask a question, you can type your comment and we are happy to share those on the show as well. So, Lee, I've known you for a couple years through dance, and when I asked you about your career and the work you do, you had said you worked in the flavor and food industry, and I was like, I didn't even know that was a thing. That was a career. It was so exciting. So I'd like to go back to the beginning when you were a young girl and talk about like where this interest in food and science really came from for you.
Yeah. So it's kind of interesting, because I always loved science, and my dad was a chem engineer. And when it was time to decide to go to college, especially I have to say being Asian, it's like you got to take that kind of science path or doctor or something. But I really didn't want to go into like chem engineering. So I looked at Rutgers, or Cook College at the time, and they had this major called food science. And I really didn't even know exactly what it was. But I'm like, oh, I love food and I like science. And sounds good to me. So I kind of fell into it, which is kind of funny because a lot of people didn't enter as a food science major. They kind of, maybe start as a bio major or something and ended up in food science. But it's turned out to be a great career. And I used to say, well, people always have to eat. So hopefully I'll always have a job.
I love it. Did you though, as a kid, like, were you cooking a lot when you were a young girl? Like, is that something that you just naturally enjoyed doing or you learned from family?
Yeah, I did. I cooked a lot. My mom had to learn everything when she came here because she came from China. She didn't know how to cook, but she learned and she helped me. I actually made my first like Asian meal for my parents' anniversary. But it was funny. I think I was like, I don't know, 11 or 12 or something, but I always loved to cook. I always loved to bake. So yeah, always was rooted in something around food. So, yeah.
No, I love that. So I want to go to the college thing with food science because like I said, I had never heard of that before. When you were in school, what are you studying? What are food science classes like in college, especially the one you went to?
Yeah, so you have all the basic sciences, like so biology, chemistry, microbiology. You also have courses in food engineering, and we actually had a 2 semesters of that, which was very interesting. I got to go to Anheuser-Busch Brewery, Hostess Bakery, Pepperidge Farm. So you actually get to see products being made, but you also have to learn how like the equipment works and everything. So it really is like science and then the practical side. So we had like product development classes where you actually had to like develop a product and kind of design it like something you'd see in the supermarket. So when people ask me what food science is, I usually say, everything that you have in the supermarket, like pretty much comes from my industry. And a lot of the food service stuff too, like, like the Taco Bell and, Burger King and all that. A lot of the science is behind it because it has to taste good. It has to be stable. It has to be affordable. So yeah, it's a well-rounded kind of major that covers science and then some of the practical side. Yeah.
Yeah. And like you said, you work for one of the largest companies in the world that kind of deals with all of this. And I'm curious, can you talk a little bit about like how this works for a company? If a company says, okay, I want to create a new food or a new flavor, like what is the process for that behind the scenes?
Yeah. So what my company does is actually make the foods, like we make flavors for the foods, and people go, well, what is that? Because doesn't food have flavor? But if you think of things like yogurt or ice cream, cookies, like almost anything needs like a little boost of flavor to make it palatable, to make it last on your shelf and everything. So a company like a major food company would come to us and say, well, we're looking to develop a new, cookie, because actually that's what my client is. And we want to have a new fun flavor for it. So our team, we take some marketing information to see like maybe what's out there, like what's popular. And then we work with our technical team to actually develop the flavor and put it into product. So a lot of times our customer will give us kind of like a base formula or something that our flavor chemist develops the flavor. So maybe it's a s'more flavor or something that goes into ice cream. They'll develop the flavor, and then the people in the technical labs actually put it in, and then, everybody has to taste it and make sure it's the right level, doesn't taste weird. And sometimes we have consumers come in and actually tell us whether they like it or not. So we kind of validate it, and then we take it to the client, and then they do their own process of validation and all that. So it's kind of fun, especially when you see something from start to finish, and then you see the package out in the supermarket, and you're like, "Oh my God, we made that!"
Yeah, that's
So
how do you use s'mores as an example? How do you figure out in a lab what s'mores is supposed to taste like from what you make, outside at a campfire, and then put it into a cookie or an ice cream?
Yeah, so there's a lot of different things that go into it. And sometimes we may need someone from our research group. We've done things as far as going out into the fields, like let's say it's a strawberry, and kind of extracting the aroma or whatever comes off of a strawberry, and then putting it through some, equipment that actually pulls out what the chemicals are. So then our flavorist will take that formula and try and formulate a flavor around it. So there's different like tools. It's really art and science, especially for the flavorists. They really have to understand and remember, what they're tasting and what kind of chemical. And chemicals are natural or artificial, because I hear people maybe cringing about hearing chemicals, but natural flavors are also chemicals. But they have to remember them and then figure out how to put it together and make a flavor that tastes like what the consumers are expecting. So like you said, a marshmallow flavor. They have to remember kind of what different nuances that has. If it's like creamier or brown or more caramel. So it's really interesting.
Yeah, that is incredibly fascinating that you can extract what the chemicals are from the actual thing that you have in the environment. I think that's really interesting. And you and I have talked a little bit about before some flavors. Can you share, if whether we're talking about cookies or ice cream, whatever you want to say, what are some of the most popular flavors out there that you find?
Well, of course, vanilla.
Is it vanilla more than chocolate?
Yes, absolutely. Vanilla is probably
Really?
the number one, selling flavor for anything, ice cream, whatever it is. Yeah.
Why is that? Do you know?
I guess it's just, it's overall, what people are looking for, like that comfort. And not everybody actually really likes chocolate. A lot of people do, but I think everybody, can gravitate towards something that's got vanilla in it or is vanilla flavored. So we do a lot of surveys that people rank what their favorite flavors are, and vanilla will always come up as number one. Yeah.
That's really interesting.
Yeah.
And I know, Oreo does a lot of different flavors. Lay's chips, I think, is another one that does a lot of different flavors. And for a while, they were doing something where people, I think when they first started, maybe a few years ago, people could put in suggestions that they had buffalo wing chips or popcorn based chips. And then they would kind of test them into this whole kind of contest thing. I'm curious, when you have these things and people are testing, like, how do you know, how many people do you have to have tests to say, okay, we're going to put this to market now and sell it and now go to the next level?
Yeah. So for our company, we usually do a smaller version of a test that a big company, like Nestle or Kraft or somebody would do, to just say, okay, we're pretty confident in what we're giving to them as a flavor, but the consumer product company really does some usually larger scale testing. So it depends, because it depends on like what markets they want to go into. Like they might do a huge test in Chicago, in New York, and then in California. And, they could have, hundreds of panelists doing the test to validate it, because they want to make sure that, it meets the consumer expectations and that they're going to buy it. So those are usually the two things. Do they like it? And are they going to buy it? So
yeah. And I want to just show here. Kelly says mint chocolate chip is her favorite. I also like mint chocolate chip, although I am a big vanilla fan as well. Nanette is just proud of you being here. And we have Sue as well as Luann here watching you as well, which is wonderful. We always love when we have people interacting. Again, if you want to, you can write in the chat as well. I'm curious because I'm in branding and marketing, and we always talk about, brand. I talk about brand being a feeling. We talk about how do we create and evolve all the senses. We talk about sound, we talk about visuals. How does taste, or how could taste be a part of a brand if they were doing like an event or an experience? How could they use that in a way that exemplifies who they are as a company? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, I think, for a company, I mean, I guess it kind of depends on what, product area they're in and what market they're trying to reach. So we would look at it and go, okay, well, who's your target market? And are they, maybe millennials or Gen X or baby boomers, So baby boomers aren't going to look at the same type of profiles as like millennials. Maybe baby boomers would look at more nostalgic type of products, things that they had, when they were younger. And, you tend to think like millennials are more looking for that maybe shock factor or something, something different. So it really depends on who you're trying to resonate with and, like what kind of vehicle you're looking at. Because now there's so much social media. I think everyone's looking for different ways to market and brand. It's not just the commercial, on TV and a print ad or a sales flyer. Now it's, you've got TikTok and Instagram and, so many different avenues. And a lot of I think some of the success stories are just through social media, where something just, kind of hits a wave, and maybe it's not even intended, but I think more companies have to look at different ways to reach out to, all the vehicles, the media that's out there now.
Yeah. And you've been doing this for a long time. What has maybe been over the years a flavor that either surprised you, that was really different, that you loved, or maybe something that you thought like, oh, I'm not going to like the taste of this, but you really enjoyed it?
Oh, that's a hard one. I think just in general, like the salty sweet, sometimes you're kind of surprised, like, oh, I don't know if I really would have liked that, but I kind of do. One of the things I think that's interesting being an international company is seeing flavors that are popular in different countries. And I remember going to Mexico, and they had this bubble gum that actually had like a sweet chili flavor on it. And I remember like looking at it going, oh, I don't know if I'm going to like this. And then I tried it and I'm like, wow, this is kind of cool. It's like savory and sweet. And it's something I never would have said, oh, I would actually want to like try this, but I tried it because I was in another country and was surprised. So
no, and I think like you had mentioned earlier, like different parts of the world are going to gravitate towards different types of tastes and flavors. And so it's interesting, like you said, you might not have been apt to try that in the US, you try it somewhere else and you realize, oh, actually this tastes pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And that's what's interesting now is people are, well, maybe not now during COVID, but prior to COVID, people were traveling so much and going through different airports and countries and seeing different things that now, we see the trends really go from around the globe, a lot of different ethnic things and things you wouldn't think of, that would be, liked in this country or other countries. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. Yeah.
And like I said, you've been doing this a long time. You have two children. They are now grown adults. But I think one
Mhm.
of the challenges, I don't have children myself, but I hear all the time for women specifically, is the challenge between how do I be a parent and how do I keep my career? How do I do two of those things and not feel
Oh yeah.
guilty and be able to do that? How did you kind of manage being a mom and being able to continue your career as well?
Yeah, that probably was one of the hardest things to kind of try and figure out. I started out working in the labs, and in the food industry, a lot of the companies are up north. And as you probably know me, I like living at the
The
shore.
warm,
I
yeah.
want the flexibility. I also want to be home with my kids. So here's where I say, you have to be open to different opportunities and listen to different people. And I met a person who actually, we went to school together, but we were different years in the food industry. And she said, you should really look at getting into sales. So even though I had a technical background, I ended up getting into sales because it afforded me the flexibility to raise a family. I mean, I was fortunate enough to be able to have a live-in au pair, um, so that when I traveled, somebody was here. But I also, when I worked at home, I also had my kids home. So it gave them a little bit of normalcy in that. And for me, I still felt like I was there enough to be with my kids because I had more flexibility because I could do work at night. So yeah, it was a really hard balance. And I always said somehow every stage I needed to find a way to figure out. And if I ever felt the balance was going to be too much, career wise, then I'd have to figure something out and change. And actually, which is why I changed jobs, because I started doing too much international traveling. I wasn't home enough. And that just wasn't going to work for me. I wanted to be with my kids. So I think luckily found a balance. It's not
Yeah.
easy.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's interesting, like you said, sometimes it's just changing the role even within the industry, and really kind
Yeah.
of thinking about what it is that you need at that time. The other thing we hear all the time too, again, more women than men, is that women don't always get as much recognition or don't always get as much growth or pay or whatever it is. There's always kind of this disparity between that. Did you ever experience that, or were there any ways that you ever kind of combated that and made sure, like, no, I have value, what I do is
Mhm.
great, and be able to kind of push through that?
Yeah, I think, when I started, especially in sales, there weren't a lot of women, and there weren't a lot of technical women in sales. So it was, in a way, tough to compete. And I think I just always had to say, I'm going to do my best job and, have the confidence to ask for what I think I deserve. So in all of my jobs, I do feel that I was well compensated, but it was because I asked for it. I feel that I worked hard and I asked for it. I think it is hard being a woman, especially when I was traveling, because my role was also a mom. So I had to make sure that there were meals there, that the clothes were laid out, that the schedule, that, my husband knew the schedule, not that he didn't contribute, but it is oftentimes a lot harder for a woman having to kind of juggle both. But I think, speak up, you really have to speak up. You have to do the work, but you got to speak up and stand up for yourself. That's what I would say.
Yeah, I agree. I think a lot of people do struggle with that. Was that something you naturally were good at? Did you learn it from your parents, or was that kind of a skill that you had to kind of figure out and gain yourself?
Yeah, I think a little both. My mom was a really smart, strong woman, or is. So I'm really proud of that. She had a master's degree in library science, and she did very well. And she had to learn how to do almost everything by herself when she came to this country from China. So she was a working mom, and I saw that. I think, as well as learned along the way, trying to figure out how to, compete, especially in sales with the old boy network. And, they're taking them fishing and, whatever, golfing and all that. And, I said, well, I have to find my own way. It doesn't mean I need to be exactly like the guys, I've got to figure out my own way that helps me connect with my customers or the people I work with, so everybody's got to find what they're comfortable with and what their strengths are. Because, maybe some people's strengths are entertaining, but maybe they're not, so find what you're strong in and work on that instead of saying, well, I have to compete in the same arena, the same way with everybody. That's just the way that I feel.
Yes, I 100% agree. I like giving you a air five across the way. I just want to have a couple others here. Kelly says that Patrick loves the cotton candy flavored popcorn and grapes. Those, so on a side note, those grapes, so those are something that they add a flavor to. And right, the cotton candy ones, because I see them at the grocery store for like a certain period of time.
Yeah, I actually don't know that much about those.
I've never tried them. I just know I see them like they're for like a few weeks at a time that they have them as well. And Karen just saying that you're awesome, and Nanette saying you're also a great mom, which we love to hear as well. So the other thing, which is how I know you, is through dance. You're a dancer, you surf, you're an artist, you do incredible cakes and cookies. You're just like multi-talented in so many ways. And you told me when I talked to you before, you actually didn't start dancing and surfing until later. When did that stuff kind of start, and why was it? Why did you say, you know what, I think I'm going to pick up these new activities?
It's funny. I mean, I think I always, when I look back, I feel like every decade I tried like one or two new things. So I say you're never too old to start something. Dance, I always wanted to dance, but I think I was too shy when I was younger, didn't have the opportunity, whatever. It's funny because, again, I always say, there's a lot of people that come into your lives that make a difference. And one of my friends, and her, Lisa, that I met at the gym, we became great gym buddies. She wanted to take a free lesson at Fred Astaire and maybe try ballroom dancing. And I was like all for that. My parents ballroom danced. And so I always wanted to do that. And so, here I was in my 50s, and we went for one lesson, and I'm like, I'm in. This is my new thing. I can finally do what I really have wanted to do all my life. So I think it's with everything. Don't put those dreams aside. You can always start something new, and try it and not be afraid to fail. I think that's the big thing. Not be afraid to fail, and don't be afraid to look foolish sometimes,
Yes. And Nanette's also saying that you also ski like a bandit. So again, multi-talented and skilled here. And you are a beautiful smooth dancer, Lee. And you also have this kind of competitive side where you want to do well in all the things that you do. Again, is that something that you always were like that? Were you always like, as a young girl, like I'm going to win, I'm going to do well, not in a negative way or against anyone, but just really this kind of internal piece of having a high level for yourself? Is that something that was always there as well?
Yeah, actually it wasn't. I think growing up, I was I don't think I had that confidence when I was younger, so I did some sports, but I never felt like I excelled at anything. And I think what changed me is actually skiing. Again, the same friend who helped me get into sales, she also was a skier. And I realized, and all her and all her friends were so much better than me. I found that it gave me a challenge because I didn't want to be left behind. And once I became a good skier, it gave me confidence in other things. So it was kind of that challenge and being able to meet that challenge that kind of awakened, I guess, this competitiveness, but I'd say with myself, not with other people, because I actually don't like to compete. I don't want to necessarily, go into competitions per se. I want to improve myself and meet that goal of where I want to be, and I think certain things like that, like I said, skiing kind of helped me launch that desire for other things, because I felt like I could, kind of that little engine. You can do it. You can do it.
Well,
Just keep trying.
Yeah, I think you come off as a very confident person, and I think there's a lot of people, especially as people get older, there is this fear, or they feel like they're too old, or something's too late, or I don't want to make a fool of myself. I've taught dance for years. I've worked with adults, and I remember just so many adults like being successful in their work, that them coming to something new, they hated it. They hated kind of being at the bottom. So do you have any advice for people that are just kind of feeling that way, whether it's a sense of fear, lacking confidence, of like trying something new? I don't know if you felt that at any point, or if you have any advice for somebody like that.
Oh, yeah. I could definitely say, so when I started, my daughter will also attest to this. When I started surfing, because she started first, I started my older daughter at the age of 8 in surfing lessons in camp. And a couple of years later, I was like, oh, I want to just kind of pick up a board and paddle around and stuff. And then I decided I really want to learn to surf. And I had no idea what I was doing. And I must have embarrassed the crap out of her, because she was at camp and I'm floating around trying to figure out how to surf. And she clearly remembers, as do I, my surfboard, pitching up in the air, and her mom falling and stuff. And I just was like, you know what? So what? Who's going to remember? Who cares? For me, it's about learning to laugh at yourself and not to give up and not to care what other people think. People don't just become experts at things from not trying and not starting somewhere. You have to start somewhere. And maybe you start something and you give it your all, and you decide you don't want to do it, but at least you've tried. So I think, the things that I've tried, I just keep trying until I decide, is this the thing that makes me happy? If it doesn't make me happy, then don't do it. But if I know that I'm on the road to something that's going to make me happy, I'm going to keep trying it. And I don't care what I look like. I don't care what people say. And I think I've also been lucky. I've had a lot of supportive friends, especially women, skiing, surfing. We have a great group of women that I'm so thankful for, because it can be very intimidating. And I think it's a lesson for all of us to help other people, like you said, with dance. I love seeing new people come in. It makes me happy to see people at any age trying something, and, just have fun with it and don't take yourself so seriously. I think that's the big thing.
Yes, I agree. And it is scary to start something new. I always remind people, and I remind myself when I do something new, everyone was a beginner at some point. And so we've all had those same feelings, and just realize like every person in that room has been there, whether they want to admit it or not, but they have been there, and you'll kind of get through it. So it's wonderful to hear that, you have that. And it's funny, like now it's kind of also a funny experience that you and your daughter in a memory you can share, which is nice as well, right? So I think the other thing I think too that's challenging, I think for adults as a whole, I feel like after college, but also again for women or for adults that have devoted their lives to their kids, and now the kids are older, and now it's kind of this new part of life, and maybe they're coming close to retirement, and it's kind of like, well, what now? Like maybe their friends don't live close by, or they've been devoted to their work. Like, do you have any thoughts on how do you kind of find this new sense of joy and life, and meet new friends and do new things when you're in your 50s, 60s, 70s, and you're kind of like, okay, I've been used to something for so long, and now that's changed?
Yeah, I think you have to have an open mindset and look for other opportunities, and just get out there. I mean, there's so much more available now, because I even remember graduating from college and going, wow, I don't have my college friends around me anymore. How am I going to make friends? And trying to sign up for a community like photography class or something. And it was so hard to meet people. Now it's like, there's the meetup groups, there's more opportunities at gyms to, do different things like yoga, or take painting classes and things. I think there's a lot of, different avenues to try and meet people. You just have to get out there, and look for it and try and be open to those connections, because I think the hardest thing is meeting people later in life and having that connection. And again, I think I'm so lucky with dance. I've, met you and a great group of, especially a great group of women and some men. So I think you really have to look and be open, and not be solo, not do everything alone.
Yeah. And I think too, I mean, we have a difference in age. And I think people always are like, whoa, you're friends with people of all different ages. And I'm like, because I think when you're an adult, it doesn't matter. If there's something you both have an interest in, it's not weird or anything. When I have lunch with you and Luann and Sonia, like, I love it. I have so much fun. It's like, we actually a lot of similarities that we've had in life. And so I think that's nice too, that you really can connect with anyone. And I think also, the people or things you want to do may not be right around the corner. Sometimes they are. I know for me, sometimes I'll drive an hour to do a certain dance event because that's just where it is. And I think, like you said, it's really going out and doing that as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you also, although Kelly said you've always been able to draw, but you've been doing a lot of this new beautiful art. It's kind of like this like minimalist art with like movement. Obviously, even with your cakes and your cookies, it's an artistic thing as well. What has kind of inspired you recently with the new type of art that you're doing with kind of these paintings and drawings?
Yeah, well, it's funny. It started, I've always loved to draw and sketch, but I never knew what to do with it, So I have a sketchbook even going back. It's funny because I know Kelly from high school. I have sketchbooks going back to high school, but they just stayed in the sketchbook. So it was funny when, I guess when COVID started, my daughter is involved in the International Surf Therapy Organization, and they were looking for drawings for adult coloring books. And she said, "Hey, Mom, would you draw something?" So that was actually when I first started drawing. And then the idea came that said to me, like, oh, if I can draw that, maybe there's some other things I can draw. And maybe because I've never taken lessons, I don't know how to really draw full on, sketch faces and everything. Maybe I can do a little more of kind of an impressionist, type of art. And I love color. So it just all of a sudden clicked. And once it clicked, I couldn't stop. I couldn't stop drawing. I couldn't stop drawing and painting. And now I've been doing drawings probably every couple of days. I have a new painting. So yeah, I finally found, and again, years of trying to figure out, well, what's my avenue? And that also came out with the cake decorating. So that became an avenue for a while. But it's hard to continue to do the cookies and the cakes. It's very time consuming and stressful and all that. So this is, I'm really excited that I found something finally that I think, can kind of feed that desire to express.
And also your cakes and cookies are eaten. So you don't get to keep them, right? You take a picture, but afterwards. Yeah. Sue also says your work is amazing. And I really am loving the art recently. It's got a very simple feel to it. It's got an athleticism to it. And then of course it's also got this kind of beachy, dancey, it's very you, which is wonderful to see. And I love, I think, Lee, to me, I always talk about on this show, ordinary people doing extraordinary things. And ordinary just means, like, to me, like someone who's not like famous, right? Like they're not famous, they're not a celebrity. But I think extraordinary to me is about really like being your full self, living a life that you love, helping others. And you always have this very like youthful energy. You're always creating and trying to do something else. And then that not only feeds your soul, but it comes off onto others and other people feel that. And so I really love that about you so much, and love that it seems to be something that has, continued, through life. And I think a lot of people are searching for that. So do you have any kind of final thoughts for people that are like, oh, like I just either I haven't found my thing yet, or I want to feel more joyful in my life? Do you have any other, kind of last words of advice based on that?
Yeah, I think in general, just to have an optimistic outlook, and I always say, even in work, I really try to foster healthy relationships with people and look for positives and look for signals of things that maybe, make you feel good, So you just really have to be open and open your heart, open your mind, and be out there, and I think people feed off of other people. So, nurture your friendships, nurture your relationships at work. And I think that will help, I think, anyone just be more positive, and try. And I always, one of my sayings is look at the glass half full, not half empty. There's always two ways to look at something. So try to always look at things in the positive way, because I think that builds your spirit, and, people will want to be around you.
I 100% agree. If people want to connect with you, I know you've recently kind of added some Instagram with some of your art. Where is the best place that they can connect with you?
Well, I mean, I have Facebook, but I did start an Instagram account for my art, which is at artfully_created. So it's artfully with 2 L's, 2 L's, 2 E's _created. But I'd love for people to kind of connect with me on that site and give me some feedback on, how my art's going, what they'd like to see. I also have a cake website. So
what is it?
That's Lee Chu, LeeChunut, Nut Cakes, Lee Chu Nut Cakes. That's also my other Instagram page. So
I love it. So good. And just to kind of finish off here, we also have She Gives Duff on the Food Channel a run for his money. Her cakes are over the top. I assume they taste good too, because you're a flavor person, but they visually are really beautiful. And Pat says, Lee, you are the best as well. And the last question I like to ask, Lee, all of my guests, and you did say something earlier, but what comes to mind now? What is one word or quote or mantra that you try to live by every single day?
I shouldn't tell people this, but was my password last year is breathe. Really, just breathe, take everything in and take a moment to de-stress when you can. And that comes by just breathing.
Perfect.
Sounds corny,
so
but
good. It's true. Well, thank you so much, Lee, for being here. For those of you watching and commenting and listening as well, I greatly appreciate it. And Lee, I look forward to hearing more of the great things you do and dancing with you again soon.
Yes, me too. Well, thanks so much, Carrie. Great talking.